Good afternoon. I'm Betty Martin, and I want to welcome you to Inside Leisure World number 33. My gosh, it's May already. I can't believe the months are going by so fast. Next thing you know, it's going to be the year 2000 as fast as these months are going. Well, May in Leisure World. All the flowers are bursting into bloom, and the birds are singing. Just everything in Leisure World so beautiful this time of the year. But the birds are not the only things singing in Leisure World. My guest today is also singing, and I can hardly wait to introduce you to her. She is Cantor at Congregation Shalom in Leisure World. And before I introduce you to her, I would like to do a little roll-in so that you can hear her do some of her singing at the Congregation Shalom. So Ray, you have the roll-in back there that maybe you could roll in a little bit of Galit during the camping. Thank you, Ray. That was wonderful. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Galit Levy. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Galit?
you did.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here. That was just beautiful.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful, wonderful voice.
Thank you.
Oh, we've got so many things to talk about. I don't hardly know where to start. Why don't you start just telling me how you happened to get into becoming a cantor, and is it unusual for women to be cantors of the in a Jewish congregation?
Not so much anymore. First, I had to become Jewish.
You were not born Jewish?
No, I'm not born Jewish. I was, we call ourselves Jews by choice.
Uh-huh.
And I became a Jew by choice 19 years ago. I chose my name.
Oh, you chose that name?
Yes.
That wasn't your born name?
No.
It's a very unusual name, Galit.
Galit. It means little wave in Hebrew. It's an Israeli Hebrew name. And a few times I've been to Israel, I get into trouble because they expect me to know Hebrew fluently, and I don't know Hebrew that fluently.
Well, you know quite a bit.
I studied quite a bit, yes.
Because I don't think you made a single error. Well, of course, what would I know? But it sounded very professional.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's see. Tell me a little bit more about your conversion, and how did you get to be a cantor then?
When I converted, I had gone through a divorce, and I was looking for a different kind of ideological feeling in my life, a new direction. I'd also been in the entertainment business for a number of years and had many Jewish friends, and felt a very close relationship with Judaism. One of the primary reasons is that my grandfather was one of the judges in the Nuremberg trials.
Is that right? So
And that had quite an impact on me.
I would think so. Did your grandfather live to come to the States, or did he die over there?
No, he was American. They were all Americans.
They were all
Not all
Americans.
Americans, but I think they were from all different countries.
So where were the trials?
The trials were in Nuremberg.
So he went
in
back
Germany.
over there then. He was living here and went back over there
Right.
for the trials.
Right.
That's interesting. Now, isn't it unusual, a woman cantor?
Not so much anymore. In 1975, they started ordaining women rabbis, and it wasn't long after that that they began to have women cantors.
And now this is what you call the Reform congregation?
Reform and conservative.
Conservative, because still in some of the Orthodox, or is that what they call them? The Orthodox?
The Orthodox movement, they still do not allow women to take an active part in the service.
And don't they still separate their congregations, men from women?
Yes, they do.
And they, some of the congregations wear the quite somber-looking clothing, and
Right, that's true.
because I was down in L.A. not too long ago, and I saw a bunch of people going into the temple on a Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see now. We wanted to talk about your work at the congregation in Leisure World, because I think that you have really a good message that you would like to pass along to the Jewish congregation.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to do this interview was to kind of boost our membership a little, and give a little boost to that. We've made quite a few changes. I started a choir a few years ago. I wasn't able to have them at high holiday services last year, but I have started it again.
That'll be nice.
I'm also going to be starting soon, and I don't know exactly when, but a bat mitzvah class.
A bat mitzvah in Leisure World? Now, wait a minute. Something I'm missing here, because I always think of the bar mitzvahs and the bat mitzvahs. I know I don't know much about your faith, but I always think of these being young people just going into their coming into adults, not being of age, but coming into their teens, maybe?
It's usually the age of 13. Sometimes with girls, they can be younger because girls mature faster than boys.
Yeah. Okay,
but
but we don't have any kids in Leisure World.
No, but you have a lot of elderly women who had brothers that had bar mitzvahs when they were 13, and the girls didn't.
And why was that?
Well, it just wasn't as...
It wasn't done back then?
Well, it wasn't done, right.
About how many years ago would you say they started having the bat mitzvah for the girls?
Well, they started having them several years ago, in the 20s, but that was the first bat mitzvah that I remember hearing about. But it didn't become a common thing until more recently.
So our elderly ladies in
So
Leisure
there are a
World-
lot of elderly ladies that felt like they got left out.
Okay, so what would be the meaning of it now at the ages that they are now, if they participated in the bat mitzvah? What would this mean to them?
It would mean a great deal. They would feel, I think, more a part of the community.
Now, supposing some of the Jewish men had never had their bar mitzvah in their youth for one reason or another, do you offer that for the men also?
No, it's primarily for the women. I think most of the men in Congregation Shalom have had bar mitzvahs.
Probably.
But an interesting thing to mention here is that it doesn't matter if you have a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah ceremony. At the age of 13, you still become a member of the community.
Oh, okay.
It's just become, in this century, more important to have that ceremony.
I see. Now, I noticed that you were strumming a guitar while you were cantoring a while ago.
Right.
Is that customary, or is this something, a little added touch of your own?
It's something that I started doing a couple of years ago. The board thought it would be a nice thing to do. Before that, I've been at Congregation Shalom for 5 years, and before that, from the time I started, for the first 3 years I was here, I sang a cappella. In the Reform movements, they oftentimes use guitar. In the conservative movement, they do occasionally. They have musical instruments in the conservative and the Reform movements.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly
Well,
the Reform,
it sounded very, very nice together. Just beautiful.
Thank you.
And let's see, how many people do you have in your choir now? How's that coming along?
Between 6 and 8. It varies because not everybody can always make it at the same time. And but I do have a core of about 8 people.
So if you could get more people who have not been taking an active part or showing up for services, if you can get them to start coming to service, and maybe you could find a few more voices to work in with your choir.
That would be wonderful.
And wasn't there some other things that you're doing to
Well, the congregation is starting some new innovations. They're having a luncheon and a program once a month on Saturdays. I believe it's the second Saturday of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Also, instead of starting at 9 o'clock, the services will begin from now on. They'll be starting at 10 o'clock.
Okay, so what's that, like starting the 1st of May, they're going to be...
Starting tomorrow.
Well, let's see.
Well, starting...
that'll be in April.
Yes.
Actually, the middle of April, they're
Right.
starting having the services at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock.
Right.
And that's going to be a permanent thing from now on. It's
Right.
not something just for the summer. It's going to be
Permanent.
permanently 10 o'clock. Is that going to make a big difference, do you think, in the congregation?
I think so. I think a lot of people, especially the older people, don't come because they can't get going that early.
Quite that early, yeah. It's hard. It's hard for me.
It's getting hard for me.
Yeah. And you always have your services in Clubhouse 3 in the lobby. They're at
Yes.
Clubhouse 3.
Right.
You have a pretty large congregation at this time. Would you?
I believe we have about 250 members.
About 250.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else were we going to talk about now as far as the congregation is concerned? Did we forget anything on that? Because once we cover all of this, then we're going to go into your theater and your performing arts. So I want to be sure we've covered all this before we go on to our second segment.
Well, I think I'd like to mention maybe perhaps my schooling, how I...
Yes, I did want to hear about that.
I had the good fortune around 1981 to start working with a woman rabbi. She was the 3rd woman rabbi to be ordained in this country, Rabbi Laura Geller.
And where was that?
At the Hillel at USC.
Okay.
I was her office manager there.
Mm-hmm.
And Laura is the one who encouraged me the most to become a cantor. And she put me in the right places at the right time and had me talk to the right people. I found a wonderful teacher at Hebrew Union College, Cantor William Charlin. Hebrew Union College.
Hebrew Union College, and where is that?
Well, as a matter of fact, it was right across the street from where I worked. So that made it very convenient.
In Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles.
Okay.
In Los Angeles. I also studied Hebrew at the University of Judaism.
That sounds very impressive.
And I worked for about 5 years, although I found my first pulpit after my first year.
But not in Leisure World. You
Not in
started
Leisure World,
someplace
no.
else.
It was Temple Beth David in Temple City.
Uh-huh.
And after that, I was cantor for a while with Temple Beth Solomon of the Deaf.
Oh, tell me about the deaf. That you told me before we started, but I want you to tell our audience about the
Temple
deaf.
Beth Solomon of the Deaf it's a temple in Arleta, California.
Uh-huh.
It's in the San Fernando Valley. It's been around for some 40 years, I believe. They only had the cantor on high holidays, and it was mainly for family members who were hearing. And there, of course, are also some of the members of the temple who can hear a little.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had a choir, a signing choir.
Okay. The cantoring and the choir were all signing.
Yes.
And you said the rabbi.
I had an interpreter, and the rabbi had an interpreter. My interpreter was also the choir director.
Isn't that interesting? And you say they have been a signing congregation for how many years?
Over 40 years, I
Over
believe.
40 years. So that is, I think that's just remarkable.
And unfortunately, they have just recently lost their building, and they're going to have to be moving to another location.
Well, they'll probably get something right away. Let's hope they do. Yes, that was very interesting. So now maybe we could go to the second roll-in, if Ray has that ready, and we can hear some of your. I think that what we have is some numbers that you did with the Leisure World Theater Group.
Yes.
In the musicals. So, does Ray have that ready?
Without
delightful. You just have a wonderful voice.
Thank you.
And now I would like to talk a little bit about your theater arts activities and how you got started singing in the theater arts.
I started very young. I started out actually in opera and still in my teens. And
did you have a good strong voice then like you do now for,
yes.
for opera?
Yes, I did. Probably even stronger, I think.
Yeah.
But I performed in Die Fledermaus and The Magic Flute, and went from that into doing musical comedies, like Carousel and Oklahoma.
Were these theaters in and around Los Angeles, or were you in other areas?
In another area. I was in mostly in the Midwest. I
Oh, really?
belonged to some touring companies in the Midwest.
Touring
Texas
companies?
And Oklahoma. I mean, yeah.
Texas and Oklahoma?
Texas and Oklahoma. We traveled around to other states as well.
Was it like a troupe that
Yes.
Was booked ahead into these different cities? And
Right.
And how long were you on the road with that troupe?
About 5 years, I believe.
About 5 years?
Yeah. And I did plays as well, and came back to Los Angeles. I started doing nightclub singing.
So that's been your livelihood all your life practically then?
Pretty much, yes.
Well, you have a wonderful voice.
Thank you.
I just really enjoy hearing you. And I know that you're a real asset, not only to the congregation, but also to the theater club in Leisure World. Are there any vocal groups in Leisure World that you've become interested in? Or?
I know that Leisure World has started a chorus recently, but I haven't become involved in that yet.
But you said
I
you
hope
do
to.
sing quite often for some of the clubs.
I like to sing for the clubs. I sing for clubs both in and out of
Leisure World.
Leisure World.
Let's see. I think you had where did you go to school? You said you grew up in...
Yes, Hollywood High.
You went to Hollywood High with some of the celebrities.
Right.
Who are some celebrities you went to school with?
John Ritter.
That's a good one.
Meredith Baxter and I were both in the same drama class.
I'm trying to think who Marilyn Baxter is.
Meredith Baxter.
Meredith Baxter.
She's done several things. She was, let's see, there was, what was it called?
That's okay. Senior moment.
Senior moment, that's it.
Okay, we'll move right along here because you told me a very funny story. You had a very funny story about a movie star's son.
Right, who is also a movie star.
Yeah, who is also a movie star now.
Yes, I ran away with Michael Jackson.
No, not Michael Jackson.
Michael
Douglas.
Douglas.
You told me you ran away with Michael Douglas. Now don't change the story on me. Michael Douglas. Now that's Kirk Douglas's son.
Kirk Douglas's son, correct.
Well, there must be a story there.
Yeah. It was during nap time.
During nap time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's the catch?
We were both in kindergarten.
You were in kindergarten. That is a very...
And we got about a block and a half away, and they called out the troops and ran around the neighborhood looking for us, and we were sitting on a doorstep.
Now, did you live in the same neighborhood with Kirk Douglas, or
No.
Did you?
Well,
were you in private schools, or how did you and he happen to be in the same school together?
well, I lived in Laurel Canyon at the time, and I'm not sure where he lived at this point.
That's a very cute story, though. Well, let's see. We had some other stories we were going to talk about, but does it come back to your memory? Because I think I'm having a senior moment.
I can't think of a thing.
Let's see. We're talking now about the theater arts and your professional career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we only have, about another minute left to talk about it. So I'm sure that you can come up with something in your career. You said you were kind of born into this. Now, your father was...
Yes, my father was a studio singer. He did radio for several years, and when TV came in, he didn't go with it.
He didn't go with TV?
He didn't go with TV.
Why was that? Do you know?
I don't know.
Oh, but you said that he had a claim to fame now in radio. There was something that he...
The whistler. Well, that was not really his claim to fame. He was sort of the substitute whistler. The whistler was actually, the whistle was done by a woman.
Uh-huh.
But when she couldn't make it, he would do it.
Okay, and I'm sure that our television audience all remember the whistler and that famous whistle. You did it for me before. I won't ask you to do it on the air, but
Okay.
she did it for me before we went on the air. And I think you said that your first husband was also in show business, and you traveled around with him a lot too.
Yes, he still is.
Oh, he still is, but you isn't. But what did he do?
He's a cellist.
A cellist with...
He's a studio musician also.
And is that local, or is that
Yes,
in
no,
Los
that's
Angeles?
here. That's in Los Angeles.
So I think they're giving me the signal now. Are we just about time out here? Do you want me to wind it up? Sometimes I don't get my signals very good because I get to talking and I don't pay attention to what they're trying to tell me, and then I have to say, what was that you tried to tell me? But that's an interesting story. So he is still with the, who was he with?
Well, he's a studio musician. He goes to different studios.
Different
and,
studios, okay.
Plays for movie scores and...
I see they're rolling the things over the top. Did they cut our voices off, or are we still being taped?